and a little table for not car keys, but whatever the 17th century equivalent of car keys is. A riding crop? I don't know. If you love indie tales, be sure to subscribe here and on Twitch, where I'm live most weekdays. You can also show your support through Patreon or on itch.io, where I upload assets and games shown on the channel. Hey guys, welcome to another video. Today, I'm going to be showing you this time-lapse that I created for your viewing pleasure. Basically, I wanted to start trying to do some time-lapse work here on the channel, and I thought, what better way to start than to redo the house in Insignia. This is Armin's house. It's the first place that you start in the game. So let's hit play and watch it. I started with the original in the background, and I just wanted to create some structure here. I wanted to reapproach this and make it a little bit more chunky and a bit more stylized. So here I'm just blocking out the kitchen. In the previous iteration, there was no window here in the kitchen, and I wanted to do some much more dynamic lighting this time. So that was a big factor in my thought process here. So I'm playing around with the window here. A lot of this is just playing with shapes. I probably went a little too deep this time for this area, because it's like so much more structural stuff that could go into this, but suffice it to say, started to get, closer and a bit happier with the shapes. You can see on the right there, I've got this kind of stove oven thing going on. And as I was looking at references, I realized, you know what, it probably makes more sense for this to be more like a fireplace. So I started shaping it out to be more like a fireplace. A lot of, homes in the, say, 17th century would have, something like a pot hanging and a fire going underneath. And that's kind of like the centerpiece of the kitchen. So I wanted to put some time into this. You can see I'm trying to add a lot of little touches here, like the hanging pots, little personal things. Also still doing architectural stuff, so flipping the whole thing and just seeing if that works. I knew this table, which is the centerpiece of the first cutscene, was going to be important, so I thought I'd move the stove out of the way so that they're not overlapping each other too much. But as you can see here, so in the old version there was a fireplace in the center of the scene. And I thought, well, if there's going to be a fireplace, why can't that be the same fireplace as the actual stove? Because, again, going back to something more period, they probably wouldn't have two separate fireplaces, right? This is going to provide warmth for the room, so let's make this a little more like the centerpiece of the house and push it towards the center. So just sort of like jostling with shapes and composition here. Even though I'm still working with some of the details in some areas, I get a bit ADD on this kind of stuff, so you can see me flitting around, working on stairs now. In the previous iteration of Insignia, like when I first created this, stairs needed to be 45 degrees, but now the slopes can be handled at much tighter angles. So I thought I would make the stairs a bit less of a, horizontal obstruction and have them be a bit more vertical. So that's what we're looking at here. As I'm working on stuff, whenever I'm stuck, I just add a little bit of detail to something that I know is already easy. So you don't really need to texture an entire surface to make it feel like it's textured. Here, working on the lounge. This is I started with this being a bit more modern, and then as I was looking at references, started shaping it down and down into more old style upholstery. So that's what we're looking at here. The wooden legs as opposed to the fully upholstered legs. And just the style of cushioning in the arms. Got a centerpiece table here. This, something you would put books on. I'm thinking about how, the space would be used. So if if you've had dinner, you're going to sit down by the fire and you're going to read a book. So got the fireplace there, the book. How is the place lit at night? So I had these kind of chandeliers in the previous version. I thought I would go for something a little more, a little less dainty this time, because I want it to be more like something you would see in an actual house. So we've got this like wooden circle of timber with these little, iron fittings around it. Kind of like a chandelier still, but the candles are a little more chunky and a little less perfect in this version. Of course, every house needs some paintings on the walls. In the previous version, the paintings were quite lo-fi, so I wanted to go for something that was a little more related to the story of the game and would be something that, you know, explains some character. So when the player first comes here, they're not really going to understand who this person is, or, you know, why there's a picture of the king on the wall. Maybe we just live in a place where, you know, just like in the UK, you have photos of the Queen hanging around. We've also got a nice landscape. So I wanted to make these frames a little more ornate than they were in the previous. My style in general has become a lot more freeform. So the shapes are less precise, but the lighting is more considered. That's basically the way that I approach this. And I think that's generally a way to make faster changes. So yeah, the speed it's a lot easier to create something that looks nice and complete from a sort of thumbnail standpoint, right? Like these timber beams now that frame the whole thing. I really like the way that they add this kind of level of like foreground, right? You can really tell the sense of depth with them there, especially with the background as dark as it is now. You sort of feel like you're peering into a diorama, which is something that I think is, I really love that when games do that. So yeah, I really wanted there to be more of like this diorama feel. A lot of games that I really like have this kind of depth going on in them, and yeah, something that I wanted to achieve here. You can see here I'm just refining shapes, playing with things like silhouettes. So here we've got the stairs, you know. I don't want to be doing the stairs by hand, so I try to create a little scheme that I can then copy and paste up like that. Anything you can do to save time. You know, copy and paste it, put it on a layer below, make it darker. Adding things like shadows into the entire room that are reflecting like objects in the scene is something that I wasn't really doing previously. I would like do the room and then I would just place stuff in the scene. But that creates this kind of like asset mentality that I don't really want in the game where I can help it. I mean, it's perfectly fine to have pieces that are just objects that you create separately in different files and then pop them in. But I think doing it this way allows the scene to be way more cohesive if you can help it, especially for a scene that's like the first room in the game. So here, working on this clock, giving it a shadow. It's not particularly even that much better than the old clock that I had, but I think, you know, anytime you get an opportunity to iterate, it's a win. Here, just working on this little vase with some flowers inside of it. I really, really like how these turned out. I'm really, really happy with them. In the previous version, I was so happy with the flowers that I did at the time, but I think my lighting has just gotten much more dynamic these days, and so it's been a real pleasure to revisit that. Hat stand. No house is complete without one. Coat rack. This one took a little bit of time because of the shadow on the staircase. So I kind of tried to get some depth going, so that you could see like in the prongs that face outward towards us, they're a bit more lit up. And here I'm just texturing the kitchen. So I wanted there to be tiles, right? I wanted there to be something a little bit different than the rest of the room, but I didn't want to change the color. And so having some kind of texture gives you that advantage, right? Where you can create the effect of there being tiles, right? You just suggest it here without texturing the entire wall. It's just a way of, yeah, being able to more carefully and with more nuance, you know, create some diversity in the composition. So here, playing around with a pot, some more shadows. I really wanted to give a little bit more subtlety and depth and have some more ornate details in the scene, because this is a place where people live, right? So I wanted it to feel like people live there. So the more objects I can put in here, the more clutter and you know, household bits and pieces, the better. Again, a little bit more shapes. I started playing around with the framing. I wanted to create a little bit more of an entrance. So I've got this like slightly different texture, and I've got this line here from this timber beam going all the way to the back. I think that through line creates a bit more structure to it, and I'm happy I put it there. And you can see here, I'm starting to create some texture on these beams, like right up there. basically just creating little spirals for the like the rings in the timber. I think it gives it just a little bit more, again, texture and life, as well as I start creating some grains in the wood. You can see there. And again, this kind of stuff is totally extra. You don't, if you're like a beginner and you're working on something like this, I mean, I didn't do it the first time, but I think where the game's looking these days, I'm happy to do that, right? I want to be able to take the opportunity to, take it a bit further and make things look the way that I envision them looking. So yeah, playing around with some of that object stuff. So we've got a little teapot here, maybe a little, we get a teacup. There we go. What else would we see in this scene? Just doing some details on the cutlery hanging over the stove. Oh yeah, I was trying to experiment with this idea of having there be a foreground object that's like right in the front. But in the end, it didn't really seem like it was going to be something that could be visually interesting, right? Like most cabinets and stuff just look like boxes from the back. I've got a little umbrella stand going on here and a little table for not car keys, but whatever the 17th century equivalent of car keys is. Horseshoes? What are you, stirrups? A riding crop? I don't know. Something you would just place on a table as you walk in the front door. So there's a walking stick or a cane. I don't really know who you would use that. Maybe if they're going hiking. Doubloons. A little candle. Some books. I think I still have a long way to go with this kind of stuff. Like my mentality here is still kind of like, let's put objects in this scene. But I'm happy with the way this looks. I mean, not everyone's house is completely higgledy-piggledy. Mine is, but not everyone. Another thing that's a bit different in this version is the way that Armin's house looks quite nice right now. In the previous version, it was a little more drab. I wanted there to be a pretty clear sense in this vision of the game that Armin is like quite privileged. So the town that he lives in is pretty well off. They're like upper middle class or upper class. So having nice things like this grandfather clock and this upholstered chair, not every place in the game has stuff like this, but his house does. So in the previous example, maybe I'll just bring it up now. We can do a little bit of a comparison. So most of the details are there in the existing version, especially downstairs here. But I think just the way it's presented is just a little more flat. You know, the lighting's not as considered. It's fun. There's a lot going on. And I think I'm still going to add stuff to what I'm working on here. But yeah, I just feel like it was missing an opportunity to have a nicer presentation. So that's the time lapse. Thank you for watching. I don't know if in future you'll want to see this kind of thing on the channel. Maybe you would prefer if I was just a voiceover, and maybe if the time lapses were a little shorter and more detailed. I'm going to experiment with them as time goes on, but thank you for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one. Hey pal, thanks for watching, and thanks most especially to the patrons and Twitch subs who support this channel and my game dev project Insignia. To find out more, click the links in the description below. And if you like this video, tell YouTube by clicking the like button, and then YouTube will tell me, and then I'll make more videos. That's nice. Thanks again, and until next time. I wasn't gonna do an hour and a half's worth of time sped up of me like texturing this wall, for example, or, you know, playing with some changes here and there. I just feel like, I don't know, definitely making this, I was like getting bored in my mind on behalf of the viewer. So I think I'll work on smaller things next, or more like conceptual work rather than fully detailed like this. So for those of you who are just tuning in for the first time, coming from dramas, stream or Exile stream, I have been working on the second chapter of my game recently. And in the second chapter, we go into this kind of more foresty area. There's a big town and then there's a dungeon. And the dungeon's in this deep underground forest. So I'm doing a lot of concept art and sort of mock scenes, or even just, you know, building scenes out to, show off that stuff. And I'm really pushing the presentation values a little bit more. So this is like the first chamber. You sort of fall down into this space. And I'm doing things like playing with lighting and just doing more. So we have this, we gain this ability to like control gravity kind of thing. And this is like the first chamber.